who's here, in our occasional paper, Ben, my colleague, and me, we said the government should take full advantage of the existing sweet spots enjoyed by. We're quite a young country, 25 years median, natural resources, geographical location, language facility. These are advantages. And with this inherent strength, the Philippines will find it easy to build momentum for long-term growth. But we need good governance, right policy, and adherence to the rule. And it's something that I've spent my lifetime on as a retired professor of governance from the De La Salle University. And it's something early on this year we were focusing on. And just this morning, I published in my Wednesday column, the Business World, I speak of a virtuous cycle of growth through investment in manufacturing. Investments are crucial to unlocking the Philippines' economic potential. Partnering with these economic partners and focusing on sectors that present great opportunities boost our chances of attaining investment-led growth. And one of our speakers, who will be speaking from Kyoto, Pulse Asia President, we commissioned some questions. Who among countries should we work with? And hopefully he can share those data with us. But at the back of all this, the framework we work on in Strat-based ADRi Institute is it takes a whole of Philippine society approach. It cannot be government alone. It cannot be private sector alone. But if we will focus on the results of surveys where people are dealing with the cost of living crisis, demanding the jobs and better income, asking that they can be uplifted from poverty, that's what national interest is. And it takes not only government and the private sector, but even civil society. And that's what we hope to bring together this morning, gather information, gather data, gather discussion, and advocate for a stronger manufacturing growth for Philippine society. Again, good morning to our speakers. Thank you for joining us. Good morning to our friends who are with us, especially media. Good morning to, I think, 80 to 90 people now. It was earlier 80, the Zoom link. And thank you for joining us. And I pass it on now to Joyce.
Thank you very much, Professor Dindo Maniet, for a very insightful opening statement, sir. So the government needs to support the transition towards a more investment-led growth through effective business-friendly policies. Sustaining development through invest, especially in manufacturing, is more attainable with governance and a strong adherence to the rule of law. Our keynote address today will focus on improving the business environment for the growth of the manufacturing sector. And our keynote speaker, we're very privileged to have him with us today, is a Professor Emeritus at the University of the Philippines School of Economics. He was also the former Director General at the National Economic and Development Authority and the former Socioeconomic Planning Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all give a round of applause for Dr. Ernesto Pernia.
So, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Professor Dindo Manhit, for inviting me to this gathering. And and I can see a lot of old friends. Vic Pacquiao is here, you, and Joyce Ilas. So it's really good to be here. I'm happy that I agreed to the request of Professor Dindo Manhit to give a presentation. My presentation is, I'll start with the status quo, where we are now, and so given where we are, how do we move from here in terms of advancing Philippine manufacturing? So I start with the this Professor Walt Whitman Rostow, 1916 to 2003. He's the American economist, well known for his treatise on the stages of economic growth, 1959, and was a professor and political theorist, and served as National Security Advisor under Lyndon B. Johnson and JFK. Professor Rostow's paper or treatise covers agriculture, manufacturing, and manufacturing is part of industry, and services, deemed interactive and move linearly, supporting each other, one and the other, according to the economy's requirements and people's needs. So tables 1 and 2 show the main ASEAN 5 countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, with their respective economic tours. Singapore and Brunei Darussalam, being sui generis, are not included in this. These are sui generis states are not included in this in ASEAN, the original ASEAN countries. You can see among the 5 ASEAN countries, the Philippines is the lowest in manufacturing, in particular, at only 17.24%, and industry as a whole as 29%. Yet it is consistently highest in service sector, 61%. By comparison, Thailand is the highest in manufacturing at 27%, and Indonesia at in industry, highest in industry at 41%. The Philippines is clearly the outlier, following Rostow's stages of economic growth. It is known that the Philippines tended to leapfrog from primary sector, agriculture, to industry, to the secondary sector, industry or manufacturing, then to tertiary sector, without completing fully the previous sectors. The previous sectors when we are in the service sector, the previous sectors are agriculture and manufacturing that are not well developed, not fully developed. The current status quo makes it quite challenging for the Philippines, being the laggard, to advance to its manufacturing sector. Enhancing the manufacturing sector, as our ASEAN peers have, requires ample foreign direct investments, and of course domestic investments, and the capacity to export, which is facilitated, among others, by FDIs themselves. Our BSP provides data on key economic indicators of selected countries. The Philippines thus far has had the lowest yearly level of FDIs at 9%. $9 billion US dollars, even as late as 2022, compared with Thailand's at 10 billion, even more so compared with Malaysia at 15 billion, and 15 billion, and Vietnam at 17 billion, and Indonesia at 21 billion in 2022. All of these are 2022. Given limited FDIs, the Philippines' capacity to export is also limited, as exports are largely directly related to foreign enterprises that are the main sources of FDIs. Thus, the difference of our export volume vis-a-vis ASEAN neighbors has been widening. In 2022, Philippines FDI was at 79 billion merchandise. No, I'm sorry, talking about exports now. 79 billion merchandise exports were rather measly compared with Thailand's 287 billion, Indonesia's 292 billion, Malaysia's 354 billion, and Vietnam's 372 billion. Hence, the Philippines also has the lowest exports to GDP ratio at 30 or 14%, Indonesia at 20%, Thailand at 54%, Malaysia at 63%, and Vietnam at 104%. What may be more feasible in the short to medium term is tapping smartly and sustainably our mining resources, namely gold, silver, copper, iron ore, and oil mining, which we have the highest compared with Malaysia, Indonesia, especially Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, that are relatively abundant in the Philippines. But this implies not just extracting raw mining ores, but importantly, also processing, in effect, manufacturing them to maximize value added before exporting or selling them. That indeed would make a considerable difference in advancing the Philippine manufacturing sector. In fact, just last month, October 2023, the Philippines Purchasing Managers Index (PMI) rose to 52 from 51 in the preceding month, while the regional PMI for Southeast Asia declined to 49 or 49.6 as reported by S&P Global. This is positive. This is a positive and encouraging development that should be sustained by all means. Let us hope it won't be too long before we can catch up with our ASEAN peers for national prosperity by getting into manufacturing. Thank you. That ends my presentation.
Thank you very much again, Dr. Ernesto Pernia. I already have, sir, a couple of questions that I want to ask you, but we'll save that up later during our open forum. And I'm sure some of you have questions also that you want to ask Dr. Pernia. So we'll give you time later to ask those questions during our open forum. And then to proceed to our discussion today, in navigating an increasingly complex multipolar world, stronger economic ties must be built with allies and like-minded states to ensure economic security in a geo-economic landscape. Our next speaker is the president of Pulse Asia Research Incorporated. He will present the findings of a survey commissioned by the chat-based ADR Institute on who the Filipino public believes are the country's strongest economic partners. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us via Zoom all the way from Kyoto, Japan, let's all welcome Dr. Ronald Holmes. Let's give him a round of applause, please. Dr. Ronnie Holmes, can you hear us, sir? Dr. Holmes? I think we are having a technical difficulty. Sir, but I already saw him logged on earlier.
Nag-screen share siya.
Baka nakamute.
Screen share.
Okay, I think I can hear him.
Asan mo po?
Sir, can you hear us?
Yung tech dito.
I can hear him. Please bear with us. We were only given a couple of minutes earlier to prepare. There, we can see you, sir. Can we do a mic test, sir? An audio test?
Meron.
Okay, we cannot hear him properly. We're just having audio problems here, sir. Although we can already see your video. We still cannot hear you, sir. I think the problem is here with us. We're just trying to address it, sir.
Hindi lumalabas ng audio. Ayun na. Hindi buo. Kailangan na. Baka may nagalaman. Pababa mo na ako ng audio. Ayun. Ayun ito mag-go.
Sir, so sorry for the Dr. Holmes, sorry for the technical difficulty. Can you try again? Oh, there. I think that's better. Can you try again? Can we do another audio test with Dr. Holmes? Okay, sir, can you try to test the audio again, sir? Can you speak po?
Hindi, nawala siya.
Ay, nawala siya. Na-disconnect siya? Sir? Dr. Holmes? Na-disconnect mo siya.
He left. Ito.
Nagtampo ka agad siya.
Ayan na siya.
Ayan, here. Can you do another audio test, sir? Dr. Holmes, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. There you go. You can start your presentation now, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me begin. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Let me just go and share my slides. Apologies for this delay. So you can see the slides, and can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Yes, sir. You may go ahead. you may start your presentation already. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank SWAT-Base. I apologize for the slight technical problem. I'd like to thank SWAT-Base ADRi again for the invitation to participate in this session and for continuing trusting us in pulse-Asia research by working with us in eliciting the public's views on important political, economic, and security issues. As SWAT-Base President Dindo Manhit mentioned, we have conducted a prior survey that examined how the public regards the private sector in general, or the manufacturing sector in particular, in promoting economic growth. For today, I will focus on a few third-quarter questions that elicit public opinion on partnership with regard to improving the contribution of private sector or the manufacturing sector, especially with regard to leading towards economic security. I do agree with Professor Pernia when he mentioned that the manufacturing sector has a long way to go. I remember, however, seeing, I think Professor Pernia would be familiar with this one, that in terms of economic complexity, with regard to our trade, the Philippines has been moving up slightly. Maybe in terms of scale, it's not as much as Thailand or Malaysia, but I hope that with the support of government and with more investments, both domestic and foreign, that we would be able to get towards a level of complexity that some of the largest exporters in the world have gone into. It was noted in a study done by MIT that from exporting largely ore or nickel, we have started to put more complex products. Let me begin as an academic by just going through some definitions before I go to the survey questions. What is economic security? I'm working with the definition provided by OECD. It's vulnerability to economic loss on the part of the citizens, the degree to which citizens feel that they're vulnerable to hardship causing economic losses. There are various factors that, of course, lead to economic loss, and these are not merely largely drawn by the market. We should remember, for example, much of the economic losses that have been posted over the past few years have been largely due to the pandemic. War and conflict, for one, have caused massive disruptions in production and distribution processes that have also affected, for example, the prices of commodities even our countries. As Nima noted, this has become a more urgent national concern. The public feels should be addressed by the national government. In our September survey, we found out, for example, with regard to economic security, one of those measures that we use is where the people think that the economy has worsened or deteriorated over the past year. And as you will see here, basically you have almost 1 of 2 Filipinos feel that the national economy has deteriorated in the past 12 months. A significant majority of these people feel that they are strongly felt such deterioration. You will also see in this figure that in the case of Mindanao, you also have a significant majority saying that the economy has deteriorated, and even among those in the poorest socioeconomic class E. So this would indicate the sense of economic security that the public has vis-a-vis their perception as regard to the state of the national economy. Let me go to other survey data. This is, of course, from the social weather stations. They found out in the third quarter survey that the number of poor families have actually increased 40%, up from 45% in June. Hopefully this will decline, no? With the newest inflation figures that we see. It has slid down, but even this holiday season, we expect inflation again to probably go up. The estimated numbers of self-rated poor based on the social weather station data is 13.2 million in September 2023. Let me now proceed to the questions that we asked in our September survey. These are the commission questions by SWAT-Base. The first one is, who should we partner with in order to secure economic security? Who should we strengthen our economic relations with in order to ensure economic security? It's very clear in this data that the number one would be the United States and Japan, and then you are followed by equality saying Australia and Canada, with lower figures for the other countries in the European Union and Great Britain. About 1 out of 5 would identify China, and only 4% have identified India. So the partnership that we should strengthen economic relations with will still be with our traditional partners. These are the United States. And another question that we also included in the survey would be this question whether they agree or disagree that the private sector plays an instrumental role in ensuring economic security. Here, a significant majority agree that the private sector can play an instrumental role in ensuring economic security. Virtually no one disagreed, with about 1 out of 4 Filipinos ambivalent as to whether the private sector can secure stable income and basic needs for individuals. Finally, this is the question, the ways by which the private sector can help attain economic security, asked to select from a list of 7 possible ways that the private sector can achieve economic security. 6 of 10 Filipinos identified 3. These are to make goods more affordable and accessible to Filipino consumers, creating jobs and expanding livelihood opportunities. Note that these top 3 are aligned with the most urgent national concerns that the public consistently asks the national government to address. I repeat, these concerns, as mentioned by Professor Manhit, are the controlling inflation or the high prices of goods and services, and stable sources of income, either to the creation of jobs or the provision of livelihood. So those are the findings from our third quarter survey. Maraming salamat muli and apologies for the technical difficulty.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Holmes, and thank you for that interesting presentation. We hope you can stay with us. We'll call you again later, sir, during the open forum for some questions. I'm sure some of our participants here in the venue have some questions they would want to ask you. Okay, thank you, sir. And moving on to our next speaker, as the Philippines has been registering trade deficits over the past several years, have been initiatives carried out to increase the country's export production by supporting export-oriented enterprises. However, it is likewise imperative for the government to provide incentives and other forms of support to business enterprises that are engaged in manufacturing activities that serve the needs of the expanding domestic market. Our next speaker will discuss how to do just that, empowering domestic-oriented enterprises. He is the director of the Ateneo Center for Economic Research and Development and a member of the Board of Trustees of the Philippine Economic Society. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Dr. Sir Percival Peña Reyes.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm truly honored to be in the presence of greatness. I feel like a young pup among gods, no? In the economics profession. But anyway, I'll try my best to talk on this. I'll draw upon materials from our regular economic briefings. As you know, ASERD, or the Ateneo Center for Economic Research and Development, engages the public through briefings, and really these are what we say pretty much in line with what ADR Stratbase also has been advocating, that we need to also look outward. No? It's true that we have a large domestic market. We have 110 million Filipinos, but you know, there are issues when it comes to poverty and inequality that, you know, would really make it difficult for the average Filipino to enjoy an honorable or dignified standard of living. Maraming napag-iiwanan, no? So I'd like to draw upon of course, those things that we have been saying, and also recently just to share with you, I was also asked by ADR Stratbase to do a study on the Philippine manufacturing industry, and this is really just the outline of it. No? So just to plug this, of course, no, this is a forthcoming paper that we would like to share with everyone. Okay, in this paper, we provide an overview of the Philippine manufacturing industry, and importantly, really, a comparison of incentives, local versus domestic, and Philippines versus ASEAN neighbors. So details will be presented there. And the important question, no? Bakit ba tayo napag-iiwanan? Why are we left behind? Why aren't investments coming in? Okay? And a lot of it to do with the, of course, no, ease of doing business. Okay? Hindi naman to lingid sa kaalaman ng karamihan, ano? That it's really quite painful, a challenge to do business here. No? I say it out loud, okay? So we have to really do our best, no, in terms of improving our ease of doing business. No? And international comparisons, statistics would bear this out. Okay? And of course, other challenges and proposed solutions. Okay? Again, we're not here to antagonize government. We are here to help. We have to lay down challenges, but at the same time, okay, huwag tayong magre-reklamo lang. We also have to propose solutions. So this paper, I hope now when it gets shared, we'll be able to outline these things. Okay, next slide please. So, drawing upon our briefing, okay, we have here breakdown of GDP growth, okay, in terms of the sectoral breakdown. Okay, we can see that in 2020, it really was bad, you know, height of the pandemic. And it was really industry and services that suffered deeply, no? Yung ibinaba nila, no? Really was there. But surprisingly, as we can see here, no, agriculture proved to be the most resilient during the pandemic. So may pag-asa pa. And our senior research fellow, my teacher, my idol, Dr. Habito, has been saying this for so long. Okay, that agriculture could well be, no, the backbone of the Philippine economy. And how is this related to manufacturing? Because obviously, where is manufacturing going to get its inputs? It's from the agriculture sector also. Okay, now to that point, excluding livestock, agriculture actually went up 2.4% in 2021, but now sadly, no, it lags again. And still, its services, pretty much in line with what Dr. Pernia mentioned earlier. No? Services still is our main growth driver. Still pretty much services dominant. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so since we're talking about manufacturing, okay, this is again coming from our briefing materials. Now, this is the breakdown of manufacturing, and sadly, it's turning out to be sluggish yet again. Out of 22 subsectors na spelled out here in the statistics, okay, there were 11 losers, 10 gainers, and one that was flat. No? And it was really just transport equipment, no, that posted stellar gains, okay, for the first half of 2023. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, of important concern, of course, to the ordinary person, prices, jobs, and income. So let me just go through them very quickly. Okay, we would still have highest inflation among our peers. Okay, because we obviously, would like to compare ourselves with how our neighbors are doing. That's how it is in terms of inflation rates. Okay, in terms of next slide, please. Unemployment. Okay, we have next highest unemployment to Indonesia. Okay, and next slide, please. In terms of growth rate, okay, we are still among the fastest, no? But we'll have to put this also in historical perspective. in terms of how we are doing in our GDP growth performance. Okay? Now, another important thing that we highlight in our briefings, FDI inflows, which is of course related again to the export sector. Okay? Other countries in ASEAN would attract a lot of FDI, which in turn they would channel towards investments that are export-oriented. And see here, we again lag behind. Okay, perennial laggard in FDI. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is mirrored closely also by our annual export earnings. Okay, and again, Dr. Habito would write about this extensively in his columns. All right, so next slide, please. So export to GDP ratios, this is already mentioned earlier. Again, 13.8% here. Okay, we apparently are the least exporting economy among the ASEAN 6. Okay, and you know, for the longest time, 3 adjectives. I've heard this back in college, and from my stint also, the Makati Business Club, with the Asian Institute of Management. I've been hearing this from Dr. Bernie Villegas in particular. 3 adjectives: inward-looking, ultranationalist, protectionist. And stuck with me, no? And up to now, I'm already teaching. Ganun pa rin. Okay, sadly, no? But we'll have to really graduate from that, no? I hope, no? Alright, next slide. Alright, so, in relation to those things, I was also invited back in July to comment on the competitiveness yearbook, World Competitiveness Yearbook. This was also held in AIM. And there are, of course, pillars that we consider here. But the point is, we slipped in our rankings, okay, for 2023. And if we look at the breakdown of it, okay, next slide, please. Okay. We will see that in our among our peers, we lag behind. Okay. Next slide. In terms of economic performance, government efficiency, private sector efficiency, and here, economic performance. This is pretty much where we did well. In only one pillar. Macroeconomic performance. Government efficiency, which is, by the way, the largest dip. Okay? Yun, no? Government, really needs to step up. Hindi ko na lang pinakita, no? But, if we look at the GDP stats, okay, and this was also shown to us, by one of our alumni, when we had a briefing last weekend lang. Okay, take away government, our economy actually grew. So really, it was government that pulled us down, sadly. And this is again mirrored by this competitiveness rankings statistics. Government efficiency exhibiting the largest decline. In all of its sub-factors, decline. Next slide, please. Business efficiency, slight decline. Infrastructure, slight decline. Okay, so this again, why is this important, by the way? Others might have misgivings about these rankings and all of this. This is just pageantry. Well, that's precisely the point. Kailangan pogi ka for investors to come in. Okay, there has to be, they don't do it for charity or, out of the kindness of their hearts, they will help your economy prop it up or what. They have to see promise in you. So again, the president could try his best really to sell the country, market it to investors. But if we're seeing things like this, okay, you want to be a ladies' man, you want to attract the ladies, but you're obese, you don't work out, you don't have good hygiene. It's not really gonna happen, sadly. Let me just put it that way. And it's reflected here. Next slide, please. Okay, the way forward. And this again draws upon insights from our briefings. Philippine Export Development Plan. Dr. Habito, by the way, no, was part of this. We also presented this in our recent briefing with First Metro Securities, and there is a way forward. Next slide. Okay. So where we have been, leader to laggard, we see these ratios here. No, I'm not really gonna bog you down with all of these details. Next slide. You know, something hopeful to note here that I would like to highlight. Okay, that our exports actually sped up in the second quarter, despite a global trade slowdown, would suggest that a small economy can find opportunities for growth in the large global marketplace. May pag-asa if we only put our hearts and minds into it. That's the hopeful message here. Okay, and you know, it's not for a lack of vision and planning. We have all of those here. We have ambition natin 2040. Okay, that we will attain a prosperous middle class society, no, by 2040. I hope, no, that happens. Okay, but at the rate we're going, no, there are many challenges that we face: food insecurity, hunger and malnutrition, poor education outcomes, which of course would threaten the most valuable resource of the economy, which is human resource. But still, no, we would like to try our best to fight those trends. We have all of these things, no, here, and idagdag na natin dito, no, the PEDP. Okay, with the Philippines envisioned as being a major exporter of high-value products and services. High value. We have to, okay, create more valuable things, no, for us to have more income, no, and create more jobs. Next, please. Okay. So this is the PEDP long-term vision. Okay, by 2040, the Philippines is a dynamic exporting nation, leveraging its superior knowledge and creative talent to provide a wide variety of high-value products and services that cater to the needs of a broad array of consumers and producers worldwide. Okay, and what things can we leverage on? No? We have creative products and services. Okay, based on unique Filipino artistic and design excellence. DTI na mismo ang pumipili. We have to pick winners. Okay? We have to pick winners. No? And ang daming talent here in the Philippines that we can leverage on. And at the same time, also, we're pushing for high-tech, high-value, and higher-level processed products, no? Which, of course, would, again, connect with the manufacturing sector. Next slide. Okay? And there is also a planning framework. No? So demand and supply analysis based on this PEDP. As you can see, no, economics, no, demand and supply, both sides, no. Okay, balanced attack. Okay. So next slide. And there are, of course, constraints and drivers mentioned in that report. I would just like to bring that to your attention. Perhaps, no, download na lang po natin report, no? No need for me to, you know, just parrot this, no? Next slide. Okay, I want to keep to my time. Okay, so, yun, there are demand side strategies, obviously, as mentioned here. Okay, we can intensify trade promotion, marketing, design innovation, branding initiatives, pursue active membership in regional and bilateral preferential trade agreements, pursue export market diversification. Okay, Bibo, yes. No? We have to look outward nga. No? And there is demand from outside. And also, at the same time, for us to be capacitated to meet the demand, we'll have to, papakita ko na lang. I'm being told to wrap up. Next slide, no? Supply side strategies. Okay? Those are there. Alright? Next slide. Okay? And then next slide po. Okay? Maybe we can skip this. No? Skip na lang po natin. Skip. Okay, and of course, no, we have to target, no? And there are targets here, by the way, no, that are spelled out, no, for our exports. Okay, last slide, okay? Wrap up. Alright, so conclusion. Okay, obviously, we need to be more competitive, and there are threats that, as I mentioned, no, most important resource if we are to have a strategy, okay, focused on human resources. Manufacturing, by the way, would be a way, to rev up that engine, together with agriculture. Okay, parang ano lang, since I'm a huge basketball fan, I will couch this in a basketball analogy. The Miami Heat failed to make it to the championship, diba? Hindi sila nag-champion, kinapos. Why? Because they only relied on Jimmy Butler. Isang tao lang. Okay? Well, the Denver Nuggets balanced attack. They had Jokic, but Jokic could make everyone really, up their game. But that's also what we need, okay? We need to have a balanced attack. Much like a basketball team, system ball in San Antonio. And how do we do that? To enhance our competitiveness, there is a list here that government needs to do to beef up its efforts. Fully implement Anti-Red Tape Act and EODP, okay? Ease of doing business, okay? Recalibrating inappropriate regulatory frameworks or guidelines, making policy and decision-making more transparent, fully implementing programs to actualize the incentives to be provided for the manufacturing sector, upgrading physical and ICT infrastructure, because we also need to invest in technology. Okay? Make our workforce more skilled. Okay? And to that point, manufacturing potentially would give formal employment, more productivity, but again, we have to capacitate people. And heightening the domestic value added by adopting more appropriate methods, such as doing away with restrictive rules on trade in local content. So, wala akong sinasabing bago, really. Wala akong sinasabing sekreto. But, then again, okay, we know what to do, but just like the popular tagline of Nike, we need to just do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sir, for that very insightful and also very hopeful presentation. Dr. Sir earlier mentioned that we have so much talent here in the country and that we also need to enhance or help the skills of our workers. And I think that will be the topic of our next speaker. Due to unforeseen global events, emerging transformational technologies, and shifting industries in recent years, the government and the private sector must look towards the upskilling and reskilling of the Filipino workforce, as mentioned by Dr. Sir. Investing in human capital will foster innovation and build resilience among industries. That is why our next speaker will be talking about developing the workforce in a rapidly changing world. Our next speaker is a distinguished visiting fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies and also a non-resident fellow at the Strat-based ADR Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm round of applause for Dr. Vicente Paqueo.
Thank you, Strat-based, for inviting me, and Dr. Fania, long time no see. Ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Next please. Next please. Okay. Let me let me just introduce my talk this morning. So by saying productivity growth is central to achieving sustained long-term growth, real wage increases, poverty reduction, and other benefits. Now, a favorite quote in this regard is from Paul Krugman, who quote, "Productivity growth is not everything, but in the long run, it is almost everything." And that is really the essence, the lessons that we can learn from modern economic growth done by Kuznets, etc. That's the old-fashioned way of looking at it. Not the modern way of looking at it, which involves creating Maharlika funds, which does not appear in this growth development theory. So long-term productivity, in turn, depends on advances in knowledge and workforce development. The critical foundation of workforce development is the formation of basic cognitive and non-cognitive competencies. The young are supposed to acquire and build on later on as adults. Now, by non-cognitive competencies, we basically refer to like the character of the person, the resilience of the child, where you develop the socio-emotional skills. Okay, next please. Okay, so my objectives in today's presentation, supposedly in 10 minutes, is to highlight basic education challenges. So I'm focusing on that, basic education. That must be addressed to ramp up the country's workforce development. And two, to stimulate rethinking of the Philippine basic education policy and strategy in light of progress achieved and the nature of the remaining and emerging challenges ahead. A rethink is necessary to realize the so-called demographic dividends from the country's young population, a favorite topic of Dr. Pernia. To fully take advantage of the unprecedented opportunities for high-paying jobs and wealth creation arising from the fourth industrial revolution. And then lastly, to form a more solid foundation for building a more flexible and trainable workforce capable of adjusting quickly to a rapidly changing world. Next, please. Okay. Now, the system, our education system, is a mixture of public and private education institutions intended to work complementarily to optimize the education of all Filipino children. With a mixed education system, the country has become one of the top performers, you might be surprised, in basic education in terms of the average number of years of schooling expected to be completed by age 18. Now, sustained improvements in student learning achievement, however, remains a huge challenge. Next, please. So this tells you, this chart, that we are actually, very much on the top, for a given level of GDP per capita, and we are doing as well, if not better, than some of our richer countries. Next, please. So the Philippines became a super achiever in children's years of schooling as a result of its overwhelming focus on education massification, if I may call it that way. But on student learning achievement, not so much focus. Next, please. Now, here's the data, just to show you that, only a very tiny proportion of our school children meet the minimum proficiency standards of the DepEd. And even if you just say, okay, how about nearly? It's still small. That's problematic. If you cannot read and write, when you go to upper grade levels, you don't have these foundations. How can you expect them to perform well? Next, please. And the worst thing is that we don't seem to be making much progress over time. It's okay to maybe start low, but if you are, the gradient of your trajectory upwards is fast, that's not too bad. But here, Next, please. Now, so when you adjust the learning, the number of years in school, let's say you adjust it to take into account of what they actually learn in school, you'll find, according to this World Bank methodology, and which we updated, Dr. Rivera and I, you'll see this gap. And essentially, it gives the gap is 5.5 years, which indicates a huge waste of children's precious time being wasted in school. That's a huge amount in our lifetime is short. Next, please. So in view of the poor learning outcomes achieved, a rethink of current education development policies and strategies is needed. Next, please. So, the failure to achieve much higher, faster, and sustained progress in student learning achievements is not due to lack of attempts by the government and the Fed. For some reasons, those attempts failed to take root and transform the basic education system into a high-performance system. Past administrations, as I think you may have suspected, have adopted many ambitious policies, programs, projects to ramp up improvements in basic education. Plenty of innovative and cutting-edge education initiatives were tried. Moreover, there have been many attempts to scale up pilot projects. One problem, there are many sort of problems, explanation for this, but part of the explanation, I suspect, is this habit natin ng sulong-urong. Mabilis tayo sumulong, tapos mamaya, instead of learning from our failures, you pull back and, pag ganun tayo. At hindi lang po sa education, by the way. I think, next please. So, the education improvement efforts followed strategies that double and even triple down on familiar remedies. They're so-called go-to remedies, So those remedies tend to have dubious impact and on outcomes and cost effectiveness. These include increasing salaries of public school teachers across the board. Now, about double the salary of private school teachers on average, supposedly to motivate them to teach better. Second, often you will hear, or have been done, hiring more teachers per student to enable them to have more time to teach an individual child and meet enrollment expansion at the same time. Third, building more public schools and classrooms to reduce class size and meet enrollment demand. Then, improving public school teachers' qualifications and certifications, so they're requiring masters already, kind of degree, for example. And then, increasing per student subsidy of schools to achieve universal access to education without adequate countermeasures to prevent crowding out of the private schools. Next, please. So, to avoid repeated policy and strategic mistakes, it is important to learn more about them to be able to develop a well-informed new mindset by following: broadening and deepening education stakeholders' perspectives on cost-effective levers for achieving more rapid, inclusive, and sustained improvements in student learning. 2, deepening appreciation of the power of incentives, accountability, and healthy competition and public-private partnership for better education. Third, highlighting the importance of fully harnessing the capabilities and resources of the public and the private sectors, viewed as parts of a system that must work together to achieve the country's education goals. Now, a place to start developing this new mindset is to look at the public and private sector's experience, which we're going to do now. Next, please. Here it is. So this chart tells you, again, GDP per capita of countries and This is from the TIMS study data for fourth grade students, and you'll see the difference between the Philippines averages here. This is the public performance. This is the students' performance in private school. So if you look at that, that's already close to where we should be actually for the public. So, am I done? 2 minutes. Okay. Nick, please. So the same story, but this one is for about 15 years old. Okay, same story. Ulilitan tayo, pero at the same time, but you see the private sector being, performing a bit better on average. Next, please. Okay. Then you see also that this chart is actually supposed to show you that the private schools not only are have higher, are more cost effective, have learning achievement of their students that are high on average, not all, but on average. So this shows you cost effectiveness. So the private schools on average tend to perform better in learning outcomes, but at the same time they're also much more cost effective. This part is essentially, this slide here tells you where the average expenditure for public school students on average. So in the private schools that are part of the so-called the vouchers program of DepEd, it is somewhere here to the left. Next, please. Okay. So why is learning achievement higher for private than public schools on average? Well, sometimes it is dismissed by this hypothesis that private school students belong to families with a higher socioeconomic status, and therefore, this should do it better. But another hypothesis, they're not mutually exclusive, is that private schools are more resourceful, effective, and efficient in the use of resources relative to public schools. Private schools and their teachers have to be more effective, efficient, and innovative relative to other providers to be able to mobilize student fees and donations to survive and flourish and enjoy more profits. In addition, of course, to the psychic income of teaching the next generation. In contrast, the survival of public schools and the level of their teachers' salaries and benefits do not depend on their effectiveness and efficiency, at least not as critically as the private schools. Consequently, if one were to hold student characteristics and other endowment in the same, choice of private school, choice of private over public education are likely to lead to higher student learning, as empirically indicated by the next tables. Next, please. Okay, this is basically saying, holding other things constant, socioeconomic, etc., you'll find the private schools students tend to do better. Next, please. Okay, this tells you that the effectiveness of the private schools is not just due to differences in endowments, but actually the marginal productivity as measured by the coefficient comparing this public versus private is such that the private school tends to be much more effective. So public but not private schools, in our analysis, are significantly adversely by educational material shortages. But the private schools are not significantly affected. That's because I think that's indicative of the fact that they are more resourceful. Kung na-short sila, they do something else in order to be able to provide, to attenuate the impact of shortages in material, but not so in public schools. The coefficient of public school teachers with bachelor's degree significantly positive among private but not public schools. Okay? So we are investing, we are requiring that in public schools, but you pay them higher to be master's degree holders. But they're not correlated with productivity measures. Proficient of percent school teachers fully certified, significantly positive among private school students, but not public schools. Again, and then class size and student-teacher ratio are uncorrelated with student test scores. Next. So this just tells you that there is some substantive. It's not going to be a magic bullet that if you go for private schools, you're going to solve the problems of the basic education system of the Philippines, but it does contribute substantially. Next, please. So, now, sort of this is consistent, by the way, with the findings in the international literature using in kind of the randomized controlled trial programs regarding vouchers and other types of public-private partnership interventions. Next, please. Next. Okay. I have some conclusions about what should be done, but maybe I should stop now. If you are interested and if you are curious what they are, let me know.
We can guess what the recommendations are.
There's more.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll ask follow-up questions later during the open forum. Sir, we'll ask questions later during the open forum so you can expound more on your conclusion. Thank you. We would have really wanted to hear more, sir, but we're only here till 11:40. All right. So, for our final speaker, the Philippine manufacturing sector faces a need for diversification and increased complexity, as had been mentioned earlier by our speakers. To secure future growth, the country should focus on expanding middle tech manufacturing and fostering innovation. Our next speaker will discuss harnessing the manufacturing sector for economic growth. He is a former president of the Samahan sa Pilipinas ng mga Industriya Kimika and a former vice president of the American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Mr. Roberto Batongbacal. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good morning. I'm Bobby Batongbacal, and I'm not an economist, unfortunately. I'm an engineer. I'm a chemical engineer, and I do wish I'm an economist. My wife is, and my daughter is. Now, I've been in the manufacturing sector for 35 years, and if one of your kids are asking which manufacturing will I choose, I would recommend chemical, because chemistry touches 98% of all manufactured products. So in my career, I learned about textile, rubber, plastic, steel, name it. Everybody uses it now. And through that experience, you're able to put together get a better view, both in detail and in broadness, of the manufacturing sector. So, you know what? I only have one slide, and I'm gonna get to it in a while. No? But let me frame muna the manufacturing sector of the Philippines. Let me start off by saying, coming from a non-economist, that the Philippines is a manufacturing country. Bakit? I think in 2022 or 2021, I forget which one I use. The total gross value added of manufacturing is 3.7 trillion pesos. Huh? Now, this turned out to be the biggest sector, individual sector of the economy. So I said, wait, what about services? Isn't services like 50-60% of the economy? Yeah, but services is an aggregate. No? Services is trading, it's finance, it's many things. No? But when you look at every single sector under services, each one is smaller than manufacturing. In fact, trading, the biggest part of services, is even smaller than manufacturing in terms of gross value added. Hence, in my lens, I would say we are a manufacturing sector. And what does that mean? It means that if you want to grow the Philippines, we have to look at our biggest sector, which is manufacturing. So, we've had ups and downs, no? But, and there are periods, in fact, I remember there was a period between 2010 and 2016 where the Philippines was the fastest growing manufacturing sector in Southeast Asia. It hasn't been that way since, no? And different countries go at different rates. Pero, where is manufacturing in the scheme of things? When I look at the UNIDO data of gross value added of each manufacturing sector of each country, they roughly cover about 215 countries, no? What would be the rank of Philippine manufacturing among 215 countries? It's number 29, okay? So we're in the top 13% of countries in the world in terms of manufacturing. It's number 29. So, I don't know about you. I mean, that's, of course, that scale is, that's in terms of number of countries, no? But that tells you that we're in the game in terms of manufacturing, no? We're not even median. We're in top quartile in the world in terms of total manufacturing. So, and there's many things. I mean, earlier I think Dr. Holmes mentioned complexity, using the Atlas of Economic Complexity. We're doing pretty well, no? But there are particular reasons that make us worry also, and there's some things that we need to address, and that's what I'd like to talk about. Can you show the slide? So, let's step back 10 years ago. No? In the manufacturing sector, we were very excited. It was a relatively new administration. By the way, 2012 was the first time we had a manufacturing summit with the FPI, with the Federation of Philippine Industry. And things were looking up. And this is the structure of manufacturing. It's broken down by subsectors. I think there's 23 subsectors yata sa manufacturing. Pero, understanding 23 sectors is difficult. So, we put together things that goes together. So, there's the food, then there's the chemicals, and then I use a very simple term for myself, machines, kasama na yung computer or what have you. And then there's clothing, minerals, forest products, and others, no? And when you look at it, you'll see that our manufacturing is predominantly food processing. In fact, it's almost the same for the last 30 years. 49 to 51% has always been food, no? I mean, is food bad? Absolutely not, no? Pero in terms of gross value added and complexity, food is it's pretty low, no? We absolutely need it, pero if we're gonna create productivity, we're gonna be creating higher value products. So, the biggest challenge is not to decrease food, definitely, but how do we grow the other sectors? So, you may also have heard that the Philippines manufacturing is interesting in terms of complexity. Kasi for its size, it's one of those countries which has a big share of electronic semiconductor. Our share of electronic semiconductor in terms of manufacturing is probably one of the highest of all countries, no? So parang we got the very basic on the right side and the very sophisticated on the other side. So that's why the point of my talk today is we're missing a lot in the middle. If you see the long-term progress of industrialization, it's not growing by one end or the other end. It's the gradual expansion of the different sectors, no? So when you look at this, high-tech, relatively high-tech. But this, when you look at clothing, minerals, forests, can we go to the next 10 years later? You'll see 10 years is 2020. Next slide. Yeah. Almost the same, di ba? You probably couldn't see the difference, no? Halos pareho. Ang nagkaiba lang, sorry, the only difference is actually the metals is gaining some progress. You will see here, oh, I lost it. Actually, food is growing about, the average in the last 10 years about 4.8%. Food is growing about 4%. Pero minerals is growing about 17%. And so is forest products, no? So this is gaining ground, but not at, but it's nowhere where we should be, And the reason is this. There are two things that is working for us. We have the raw materials for these ones. Di ba? Oh, definitely, yes, we do. In fact, we actually have wood, no? I mean, of course, there's a lot of regulations preventing us from harnessing it. There's a lot of regulations preventing it from harnessing the minerals also. Our total, clearly, we know that yung total production natin ng clothing and our apparels is a small percentage of what we actually consume. No? So there's a lot of the economists here are also aware that in terms of consumption, we're certainly very big. In fact, the home consumption, final consumption value of the Philippines is second in Southeast Asia, only second to Indonesia. In other words, there's a lot of consumption just within the country. So, what we'd like to point out is, okay, this is steadily growing, probably with the population. I mean, if this, by the way, this is not an export winner for us. Food is not an export winner, but it can. This is an export winner, but it has very little linkages with the local economy. Labor, maybe packaging material, even packaging material for semiconductor electronics are important, no? So, this, I think, well, this is my favorite by bias, no? But this has both linkages, some local raw materials, especially when you go to the bio-based economy. When we start using our local agricultural materials to make chemicals into it, no? So, where should we, how should we do it, no? Assuming everybody agrees with what we said, that we have to grow each sector. That's why the point is to diversify. No? What has changed? No? And what are the opportunities now? Well, after the global financial crisis, after the COVID-19, people now are talking about post-neoliberalism. Post-neoliberalism. By the way, I started working 1988. I retired in 2022. The entire time was neoliberalism. Okay, so we learned that if you're in business, don't ask government for anything. Government just stand aside. Let us do what we want. Private sector knows everything. But where has that led us? No, I mean, other faster growing countries were able to be globalized and at the same time have a government that has an active role. And I think that's what we need to do again. The problem is, for folks like me, manufacturers like me who's been operating for 30 years, when government asks us, Bob, how can we help you? Aba, hindi ko alam. I don't know. Because for 30 years, we were trying to stay away from government and just do it on our own. So, if you ask me, what are the interventions you need? I'm not really sure. And it's the same for everyone. So, that's why I'm so happy to catch up with Vic Paqueo. I said, Vic, how is it before liberalization? When I go to my friends in FBI, how was it ba before the Washington Consensus? You know, I mean, kasi hindi namin alam eh. No? So, are there answers there? But are there new answers? No? I mean, if you think about the industry policy, the CHIPS Act of the US, no? They even have a bioplastic act in the US. They want to have 100%. You've never heard the US doing that. UK is doing industry policy now. I mean, and of course, all the other leading Western countries. So it signals that, yes, we should do it. Did we know how to do it? Yes, we do. Is industry policy perfect? Absolutely not. No, we're gonna make mistakes. Public sector, the government makes mistakes. But guess what? Private sector makes a lot of mistakes too. Di ba? Pag ang public sector makes a mistake, everybody gets upset. But when a company makes a mistake, oh, it's part of growing. Part of growing, yeah, in the private sector panambida. But we have to be both partners. We have to be parehong bida, no? Government and private sector have to find our path, and we have to help government gain that confidence. Say, this is what we should do. This is how we're going to do it. This is how private sector can do it, and private sector should also have that confidence as well as humility to know that we don't know everything. And by the way, things are also changing. Now, is that a guaranteed way to grow from here on? I think nobody knows. But one thing for sure, we cannot do the same thing we've been doing for the past 50 years. So, let me stop there. I hope it was helpful. And by the way, did you know that this is the sixth manufacturing conference I've been to this year? So it's very encouraging. And I want to thank Professor Manhit for adding to that, to the conversation in manufacturing. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Sir Bobby Batong Bahal. We're only supposed to be here till 11:40, but we're allowed to extend until 12 o'clock. So if you are not yet hungry, we'll extend for, I think, about 15 to 20 minutes for the open forum. Don't worry, lunch will be served till 12:40. So we'll have time to eat after. Okay, so we will now proceed to our open forum. May we call back on stage our speakers? Yes, sir. Hold on, sir. Okay, we'll call our participants later on. But for now, we'll call our speakers first. Back here in front, Dr. Pernia, Dr. Pernia Reyes, Dr. Paqueo, and Sir Bobby, please. And I believe Dr. Holmes is still with us. Sir, are you still with us? We can flash, sir, here. I'll just ask the initial questions, and then after which, to anyone from our participants who wish to ask questions, I'll call you first, sir. Well, I'll ask the first question, sir, just to start off the conversation. Yes. Okay. So we're talking about manufacturing, and we've been hearing a lot of phrases to describe the status of our manufacturing sector, most of which are not too nice. We heard this manufacturing sector is sluggish, took a dip, lagging behind. I guess many of us want to know here, what do you think are the most crucial strategies that the Philippine government should prioritize and implement at this point to strengthen the country's manufacturing sector and, of course, to promote job creation? Let me start with Dr. Pernia, please, sir. You mentioned that FDIs are needed to enhance manufacturing sector. Can you expound on that, sir? How else can we improve our manufacturing sector?
Well, FDIs are very useful, but I guess domestic investments are also good, and they can supplement what FDIs are not providing, areas that FDIs are not providing. So, it's important that we really focus on manufacturing, because manufacturing is the most among the sectors. Manufacturing is probably, in terms of value added, it has the highest value added. It tends to have a high value added. But agriculture is also important, because agriculture is where many of the things we need come from, and so both manufacturing and agriculture should be developed. Service sector, a big portion of the service sector is informal service sector, but there you can it can be anything really. So that I think is that's okay also.
Dr. Peña Reyes, you also mentioned different strategies towards the end of your presentation, and you also mentioned about the lack of government efficiency. Can you expound more on that, sir?
well, very hard to do business here, really. No? Mahal ang kuryente, matraffic. So, it's going to really be quite difficult to attract much needed investment, no? Unless, of course, we're able to, address these issues. And also, probably, one thing that we can do, okay, not just concentrate the economic activity, no, in Metro Manila, for one thing, no, but also perhaps spread it out, no, regionally. There's potential also, no. And Dr. Pernia mentioned about agriculture being important, no? And agriculture is the predominant occupation outside of Metro Manila. And we can also, of course, foster agro-industrial linkages, no, outside of Metro Manila, so that we also get to spread the benefits of economic growth more widely and also have that outward-looking orientation. So kaya naman gawin yun actually, no? But we have to really, again, with more dogged determination, follow through on things that we have set forth, no? Vision and plans and everything.
Sir Bobby, perhaps from the perspective of the private sector, what do you think are the most appropriate incentives to encourage and support domestic-oriented manufacturing activities in the country?
Wow, difficult. But what comes to mind is connected to what I was saying kanina, which is the active role of government. No? It's not enough today to stay away and just give all the positive conditions. No, one has to be active, especially when you look at manufacturing activities that has some certain difficulty to invest in. What am I talking about? When you talk about sustainable products, when you talk about renewables, when you talk about new developments, these are very risky areas, no? That private sector don't necessarily would want to do that, and that I think is where government can come in. We have very few. The government is hardly hardly have these kinds of investments, and I think we need that, no? Kasi we've got R&D, we've got commercialization, but to bring R&D to commercialization, who's going to take the risk, no? And government can afford to do so. Second, and what's emerging now, is government procurement, localization, no? I mean, this used to be frowned upon. Okay, nobody talk about localization, but when you think about school, Dr. Paquea is talking about the public sector. Can you imagine how the purchasing power of the public sector that can provide a lot of jobs in a geographically diverse country like the Philippines? Ang dami niyan, no? Whether it's uniforms, whether it's shoes, whether it's food, whether it's construction. So, government participation.
All right, Dr. Paquea, you were talking about education and the workforce before you were cut off, and we're very, very sorry about that. Maybe, sir, how do you think, what else can you do in terms of the workforce, in terms of helping the workforce to strengthen the manufacturing sector and promote more jobs, sir? Promote job creation.
I think you have to reform the labor laws. I think that it's very important to protect our labor, but let's not overprotect them. Because that overprotection, we know from studies of comparisons of the cost, talking about the cost of doing business, is that we rank as one of the more rigid and in terms of inflexibility of our labor laws. And it drives up the cost of doing of business. At the same time, actually, they actually affect adversely those that need to be protected, the young, the women, those that do not come from Ateneo or Lasal, and you can see this in the fact that our enterprise-based training outputs relative to total training output is very small, maybe only 4 to 5%, compared to the other countries are peer countries or aspirational peer countries of 15% or more. So, and that part could be traced partly from the labor regulations, and so we have to look at that. And then two, that also I think is related to the use of our training money, public funds that's being used. And in this regard, I would have the same views as the public-private kind of issues that need to be dealt with. Maybe we can, like what they're doing now with DepEd, using the voucher systems that you're free to, instead of government providing the training institutions, etc., you can give them vouchers so that they can choose what kind of training courses, who is providing them, so that there is a market competition, and the young has the freedom to choose that which suits them best.
You want to add something, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to add just one quick thing. Kasi you were asking what is it. So I talked about government, but recently, see Dr. Jesus Felipe, former ADB, he wrote an article about the conglomerates. No? Now, Filipino conglomerate is probably one of the most successful sector in the Philippines. And one may not realize that the biggest company in the Philippines is a manufacturer. That's San Miguel Corporation. I mean, they may have a lot of things, but at the core, they're a manufacturer. No? So what Dr. Felipe is saying that the conglomerates could engage more in manufacturing, specifically export manufacturing, because they're globally excellent. They can do it, no? And I think we need them to look at this area.
All right, thank you, sir. We're talking about foreign investments, and Dr. Holmes showed us a very interesting survey earlier. Dr. Holmes is still with us, right? Yes, Dr. Ronnie. So Ronnie, are you here with us still? There. Okay, sir, you mentioned the different entities that Filipinos believe that the Marcos administration should strengthen its economic ties with. On top are the United States, Japan, and why do you think are these the countries still on top, sir? Are our relations in the other sectors or aspects affecting this, sir? And also, what do you think? How else can we strengthen our economic ties with these countries?
I think it's related to the extent by which people are familiar with any of these countries. Even on the question where we asked in the past, who should we strengthen our security relations with? The United States remains number one, followed by Japan. So I think it's a long-standing relations that we've had with these two. Aside from the fact that, of course, in the case of the U.S., that our long-standing trade partner, Japan, is of course the one who has the highest contribution in terms of official development assistance. The only question, however, is whether these are the countries that we're getting investments from, specifically in order to boost the manufacturing sectors. I don't have the figures right now, maybe our economist friends would have, but it's quite lamentable that we're not getting those foreign direct investments. Actually, one of the things that I saw earlier, which is also quite distressing, is the fact that we're even tailing Indonesia in terms of exports, when Indonesia itself is a country that's not known to be export-oriented. For a country that has been trying to export for quite some time, it's distressing that it's behind Indonesia at this point. So there's really a lot that we need to do in order to attract more investment from countries that people are saying we should strengthen our relations with.
Thank you, sir. At this point, I'll pass on the mic to our participants here in the venue. Sir, you said you want to ask a question?
Yes. Your first issue was on.
Sir, say your name and organization, please.
Okay, I am Dan Agustin, and I'm just a farmer. Now, you mentioned, good secretary mentioned about agriculture and manufacturing. I'd like to introduce the word used by MBV, which is synergy. Okay, looking at the map of Mr. Batumbakan, Engineer Batumbakan, food sector is a big sector in the manufacturing. it entered my mind that maybe you're referring to Dole and Del Monte, no? I think one strategy we should adopt, as I attended the seminar of Dr. Briones here, that agriculture is backward, and remembering also the words of Dr. Javier, the president of UP then. We should invite the multinationals, you mentioned that conglomerates, no? And Dr. Holmes mentioning Japan and the US. I think this is the key strategy. They have the technology, they have the financing, no? In agriculture, we have big companies like Dole in Del Monte in Mindanao, and they provide employment, and including education. They have schools for children, and they provide hospitals. So why don't we invite, and again, another synergy would be, a small sector there would be the minerals. Why not synergize with the mining, as Doc Jokno was saying? Why do we export the raw material for battery? Can we not make batteries out of our minerals? No? That should be the synergy that we do, then we can export, right? Synergy must be part of the PDP. I do not hear the word, I don't see the word synergy in our PDP. Thank you.
Who would like to respond to that? Just a comment?
Or even education, science, like in
Okay,
Korea.
let me take a stab on that one. I think that's correct. We have to kind of formulate policies and strategies that actually take advantage of potential synergies. And in education, we are now talking about public-private complementarity, which by definition is essentially, some like the private sector has its own strength, the public sector has its own strength. But then I think that's why we have a mixed economy, because together you can combine them so that you can cooperate where it's best to cooperate, and you can compete, in order to get the fruits of competition. So, but the thing, precisely because, in spite of the fact that it is in the Constitution about public-private complementarity in our education, the policies that were actually pursued by government in the past decades has been such that they were crowding out the private schools. And that is because, in other words, they were substituting rather than working together in a synergistic fashion. So what we need to do is to develop a framework that basically guides the public-private partnerships and the surrounding policies and regulations that are friendly towards promoting synergies.
All right, thank you, Sir Dan. Next question, sir.
So, Roel Briones, Philippine Institute for Development Studies. So, the more I listened to Vic a while ago, the more I thought that we need to badly need to amend our constitution.
Public service law.
No. Our constitution says we need to spend the most money, public budget, on education. So if Ernie wanted his way of 7% GDP in infra, he need to give 7.01 to education. But then look at what happens. We're pouring on so many resources. We're getting worse outcomes. This is a negative TFE black hole, talking about government efficiency. So, what to do about that? So, parang nangyari kasi, previous education secretaries, they convinced the president, they convinced the Congress to take the viewpoint of the teachers, what the teachers need, and they forgot the students. Maybe we need to put a student, a high school student, as educated. It cannot possibly be more screwed up than if we had a high school student take over our secretary. But what kind of leadership do we need to arrest this problem as quickly as possible? Because this is a catastrophe. This will be a catastrophe 10 years down the line for our manufacturing, when we get these mangmang and bobo trying to find a job in your factories. No, really. This is a coming job apocalypse. So,
except the...
I remember reading or seeing a news article about a grade 6 student who still doesn't know how to read. That's very
There are
sad.
many of them.
Secretary, would you like to comment?
the TikTok.
Our education system is in crisis, and also the health system is in crisis, and yet we are not spending enough on education and health. We tend to spend. The government tend to spend on visible projects like infrastructure projects. So much money. Something like 9 trillion. Yeah, 9 trillion is allocated for infrastructure during the BBM administration. But not enough is being spent on education and health, and that's where we are lagging behind. And we also have the highest poverty incidence, and that's because partly because our education system and the health system are not in good shape. Yeah. And we were talking earlier about FDI, foreign direct investment. I think one of the reasons why a lot of investors are shying away from the Philippines is we have too many regulations that tend to make it easier for corrupt practices to happen. And I think in ASEAN, I know Thailand and Malaysia and Indonesia, they're also corrupt, but we are, I think, more corrupt than those countries, and that is why we are not getting enough the kind of FDIs, the volume of FDIs that we need. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Sir.
Maybe just to say something about this, very interesting. Okay, we have, of course, a threatened future. No, we have, and the other economists have weighed in on this, mentioned this, no, climate crisis. Nagsasabi niyan. We have geopolitical risks, already mentioned in the news. Sir Roel alluded to our silent crisis. Okay, early childhood malnutrition and stunting that would worsen our education crisis and eventually threaten our very economic future. So instead of reaping demographic sweet spot, baka demographic time bomb pa ang mangyari sa atin. And maybe, perhaps it's beyond my ken to comment extensively on this, but worth mentioning na rin, hihiram na lang ako ng tapang sa kay Bossing, Dr. Habito, because he also speaks bravely about this, and I'd like to mention this. We have a broken political system that makes government and governance the nation's biggest obstacle to economic stability, dynamism, and inclusive development. So what do I have to say about this? For us, at least, who know better, vote better. Okay, so that we have more qualified, more dignified leaders with integrity, who will, we still need them. So, yun yung natin, malaking problema na kailangan din nating tugunan.
Yeah, I worked for multinationals for 30 years. So I've also been a regional manager in Asia Pacific. So I've seen when in my perspective, pag nandito, you think that nothing works here, but a lot of things don't work in other countries. I would say we're probably median. In terms of regulatory, sa chemicals, we always complain, but when you see the regulations in Taiwan, in Japan, it's very, very difficult. So it's all relative. It's a matter of putting the right resources to meet what's required to invest in a country. Pero yung integrity, that's difficult. Kasi for a global or a multinational to invest in a place where your integrity is not clear, then your choice will be questioned, no? And you cannot take that risk, no? In recent years, nobody can go wrong if you go Vietnam because everybody's going. When you recommend, let's try Vietnam, approve ka ganyan kasi madali. I mean, you see a lot of examples. So what I'm saying is that yes, we have to work on the integrity of our process, of our regulations, as well as talk about our successes. No, because companies will have to refer to who's done business here, who are our customers that are moving there because we want to follow them. So that's going to be important.
I think we have time for one last question. Yes.
Hi, sirs. This is Keisha from Business World. I just wanted to know your outlook in the much nearer term for FDIs. I think the BSP is targeting 9 billion this year and 10.5 billion for next year. So do you see FDIs increasing this in the coming months or for the rest of 2023 and in 2024? Or would it decrease given global uncertainties such as geopolitical risk, dampened investor sentiment, or uncertainties in monetary policy? Thank you.
I think it's for you. I think our ceiling is around 10 billion. We have not gone beyond 10 billion, I think, from my recollection. Other countries are, just, especially Vietnam. Vietnam is really a darling among investors, among FDIs. And so there's something, maybe we should, I think the government, I don't know, the government or the private sector should do a survey or just go around ASEAN and find out how things are being done, because they seem to be doing better, more. They seem to have ways of doing things better and more productively. So let's find out how they do things.
Can I contribute my 1 cent word? When you look at Vietnam and even Indonesia, but let's compare Vietnam and Philippines. There are two things that I noticed. One is their education, shall we say, outcome indicators is so good. They even beat the US, they even beat the OECD countries like England. And yet too, they only have what they call is the double, like half a day only. The children, they don't have that kind of one full day. Okay, so they have half 2 shifts. Okay, and so they beat despite that, and which actually, in my view, reflects their resourcefulness and the grit. Secondly, I also notice that in terms of the labor protection laws that I mentioned earlier, they are more flexible and less rigid, in effect, and less costly than the Philippines. And yet, they are a socialist state. How about that?
Yeah, I was a manager for Vietnam for 3 or 4 years now. And I distinctly remember that time. Until recently, the manufacturing sector as a total was smaller than the Philippines, no? But it's a matter of momentum. Once they got the momentum, that once companies started investing there, they had, and the big push was when Samsung decided to go there, and they never looked back. So it takes a lot of momentum, take confidence, pero a lot of that is really government. I mean, they are a socialist state that is fully engaged in globalization. No, I mean, nobody expected them to come up with an electric vehicle. Now they're putting up a plant in the US. So momentum. We had momentum 2010 to some point. We lost it, we can get it again. And when we do have a momentum, let's do it. And when we lose momentum, all we have to do is start working on it again. Kasi we cannot say, and this is where, sorry I remember distinctly saying that when I was an engineer, a lot of people always telling me, Bob, wala nang manufacturing sa Philippines. And then when you look at the data, it doesn't support it. So stick to data and reject the narrative that is simply not true. Kasi we know that we know it's big, and we know it has a potential to provide good jobs, no? So let's support it and let's keep on working to grow it.
All right, and with that, I think we'll wrap up our open forum. And thank you very much once again to our speakers, Dr. Pernia, Dr. Paqueo, Dr. Peña Reyes, and Mr. Batong Bakal, and of course, Dr. Ronnie Holmes, and Professor Victor Andres Dindomanit. Thank you very much for a very interesting, comprehensive, and insightful discussion today. Let's give them a round of applause, please. So I think we still have 30 minutes to have lunch. All right. But before that, let's have a photo opportunity. Thank you, sir. Picture muna tayo, sir. Picture daw po tayo.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.